small chapel overlooked the bay. Afternoon light streamed through stained glass, casting blue and red patterns across the floor. Guests whispered, "Who is that girl? They say she saved a SEAL commander?" Sounds like made-up stories. At the end of the aisle, Nora Hayes stood quietly. In her hands was a sand-colored gauze bandage with blue threads sewn in an X pattern, worn and faded. The doors opened. Kellen Price in dress whites waited at the altar, eyes never leaving Nora. A reporter whispered to his colleague, "Stolen valor?" Nora didn't respond, just gripped the bandage tighter. The bell rang once, long and clear. Type vow if you believe some promises begin on battlefields. Include your city name. Nora Hayes was 29 and invisible by choice. She worked as a paramedic, running emergency calls through the city's worst neighborhoods. 4 years ago, she'd been a volunteer medic in a conflict zone that officially didn't exist. She was small, quiet, and never wore medals or talked about her service. The only hint of her past was the sand-colored gauze bandage she always carried, hand-sewn with blue X-pattern thread. She'd stitched it herself to be visible in darkness when flashlight batteries died and her hands were covered in blood. Kellen Price was 35 and deliberately low profile. As a SEAL commander, he avoided publicity and rarely spoke about missions. But he kept one item locked in his personal safe, a blurry photograph of a blue-threaded gauze bandage, the only evidence remaining from the day someone unnamed had saved his life. For 4 years, he'd been searching for the medic who'd counted heartbeats for him when he couldn't count his own. The misunderstanding started early. Nora had requested her name be redacted from all official reports to protect Samir, a local translator who'd helped evacuate civilians. His family was still in danger, still waiting for safe passage out of the country. Social media made it worse. Anonymous accounts posted skeptical comments. Saves the commander, then marries the commander? Sounds like Hollywood. Convenient love story. Where's the proof? The morning of their wedding, a military blogger published an exposé, Nora Hayes, name not found in rescue records. He'd obtained copies of official reports, not knowing they'd been deliberately redacted. Black bars covered crucial information that would have confirmed her identity and actions. Several guests from Kellen's family left the rehearsal dinner early, uncomfortable with the questions being raised. If she really saved him, where are the medals? Asked Kellen's aunt, loud enough for others to hear. Why won't she give interviews? Wondered a family friend. The morning newspapers picked up the story. Local TV stations started asking questions. Social media buzzed with speculation and doubt. Nora faced a choice that would define their wedding day. She could reveal classified information to prove her identity, potentially endangering Samir's family who were still waiting for their visas to be processed, or she could walk into that chapel knowing half the guests believed she was a fraud. She chose silence, not because she was afraid of being forgotten, but because some secrets were kept to keep people alive. Standing at the chapel entrance, gripping the gauze bandage that had stopped Kellen's bleeding 4 years ago, Nora made peace with being misunderstood. Some promises were worth protecting, even when they made you look like a liar. Some silences were louder than any explanation. She opened the chapel doors and stepped into a room full of whispers, carrying the weight of a secret that had saved more lives than anyone would ever know. The rehearsal had been a disaster. As the wedding party practiced their entrance, a relative spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. If she really saved his life, where's the medal? Where's the documentation? A reporter thrust a microphone toward Nora. Can you provide any proof of your military service? Her maid of honor whispered urgently, Nora, you have to say something. This is getting out of hand. But Nora remained silent. She couldn't reveal Samir's name. The translator who'd helped her evacuate wounded soldiers was finally safe, but his extended family was still trapped in the region. One leaked detail, one connection traced back to him, and people would die. Kellen started to defend her, but his aide pulled him aside. Sir, the media is live streaming this. Anything you say now will create a bigger story. The tension escalated throughout the morning. The military blogger had set up a laptop in the chapel's side room, displaying redacted documents on a small screen. Guests crowded around, pointing at the black bars where names should have been. "Look at this," he announced. "Official casualty reports from that operation. No mention of a female medic named Nora Hayes anywhere." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Some guests shook their heads. Others pulled out phones to check social media. Comments flooded in. "Fake military girlfriend. Stolen valor for a wedding dress. This is embarrassing." The breaking point came just before the ceremony. Someone had shared the blogger's findings on the chapel's Facebook page. Local news vans pulled up outside. Photographers pressed against the windows. Nora stood in the bridal preparation room, still clutching the sand-colored gauze bandage with its blue X pattern thread. Her hands were shaking. That's when the chapel's elderly caretaker knocked on the door. Mrs. Chen had been managing weddings at the chapel for 30 years. She'd seen nervous brides, difficult families, and media attention before. But she'd also been a military nurse in Vietnam. "Dear," she said quietly, "you left something with me last month." She carried a small wooden box marked "Memory Box for Couples." Inside was a USB drive with a simple label, "For K, play if needed." Mrs. Chen had seen enough young soldiers to recognize the look in Nora's eyes, the weight that came from keeping necessary secrets. "I think it's time," she said. The USB contained audio files, radio logs from the operation, static-filled communications that had never been released to the public. Mrs. Chen connected it to the chapel's sound system. The first thing everyone heard was gunfire, rapid bursts of automatic weapons, explosions in the distance, the chaos of a firefight. Then through the noise, a calm female voice. "Hold your breath. Press the bandage. Wait for quiet." The chapel went completely silent. The audio continued. The same voice, steady and professional, giving medical instructions over the radio. Someone was bleeding out. Someone was dying. "Keep pressure on the femoral artery. Count with me. 4 beats. Hold. 4 beats. Breathe." On the chapel's main screen, security footage from a body camera appeared. Shaky, urgent footage showing hands wrapped in sand-colored fabric, a gauze bandage with blue X pattern thread being pressed against a leg wound, blood seeping through the fabric. The hands belonged to someone small, female, working with surgical precision under fire. "Stay with me," the voice said. "I'm going to count your heartbeats until you can count them yourself." Kellen appeared on screen, barely conscious, wearing the same dog tags he still wore today. His leg was torn open by shrapnel. Without immediate medical attention, he would have bled to death in minutes. The woman's hands never stopped moving, adjusting pressure, checking pulse, coordinating with evacuation teams over the radio. "This is Medic X. I have 1 urgent surgical. Need immediate dust off to trauma center." The footage showed her face for just a moment as she looked up to signal a helicopter. It was unmistakably Nora, 4 years younger, covered in dust and blood. The chapel was dead quiet except for the sound of the ceiling fan. Someone in the back row put their phone down. Even after seeing the evidence, Nora didn't boast. She stood up slowly and spoke just 1 sentence. "I'm not special operations. I just had a bandage and steady hands." The reporter who'd been questioning her credibility stood up. "Ma'am, I apologize. I was working with incomplete information." The military blogger closed his laptop. The redactions, they were protecting operational security. But the most powerful moment came from an unexpected source. The chapel's main screen flickered to life with a video call. The connection was poor, the audio delayed, but the face was clear. Samir appeared on screen from a refugee resettlement office 3,000 miles away. "I have been waiting," he said in careful English, "waiting until my family was safe to speak. The woman who asked for her name to be hidden, she saved not just the commander, she saved my children." He held up a photo of 3 young kids, smiling in their new home. "Nora Hayes asked for the blackouts in the reports so my family could escape safely. She chose silence so we could have voices." The silence in the chapel was profound. No one was checking their phones anymore. No one was whispering doubts. They were all looking at Nora with something approaching awe. She had kept a secret that protected an entire family, even when it made her look like a fraud on her wedding day. If you were in Nora's position, would you have spoken up immediately or kept silent like she did? Type honor and tell us why. The evidence came from multiple sources, each piece confirming what the chapel had just witnessed. Sergeant Vega from Kellen's unit stepped forward. He'd been sitting quietly in the back row, watching the controversy unfold. "I have body camera footage from that day," he announced. "The voice on those radio logs matches the woman who kept me from panicking when our commander was bleeding out." He pulled out his phone and projected additional footage onto the chapel screen. Shaky images of a field medical station. A small woman with steady hands working on multiple casualties simultaneously. The footage showed her medical kit, sand-colored gauze bandages with distinctive blue X pattern threading, the same pattern Nora still carried. "Those bandages saved 3 lives that day, not just the commander's," Vega continued. "She hand-stitched that blue thread so we could see them in the dark." A communications specialist stepped up with printed radio logs. "At the time Commander Price was wounded, our system logged a temporary ID ping with the designation NHX. The X matched the Blue Cross pattern Nora used to mark her personal medical supplies. The specialist pointed to timestamps and frequency data that corroborated the audio everyone had just heard. But the most powerful testimony came through the video screen. Samir's connection had improved. His face was clearer now, and his voice carried the weight of 4 years of waiting to speak. "Nora asked them to redact her name from all reports," he said. "She gave up recognition so my family could escape safely. Today they are citizens. Today I can tell the truth." He held up official documents. "The woman who sewed blue thread into bandages is the same woman who carried my wounded brother 3 kilometers to safety. She counted heartbeats for strangers and saved a translator's family she'd never met." The chapel was completely silent except for Samir's voice. "I have been waiting 4 years to say thank you." Major Deacon's voice came over the chapel's speaker system. As the original operations officer, he had the authority to declassify information in real time. "With the agreement of protected witnesses, I am authorized to unseal portions of Operation Heartbeat. The medic designated X in redacted reports was Staff Sergeant Nora Hayes." He paused, letting that sink in. Staff Sergeant Hayes requested name redaction, not for personal safety, but to protect local nationals who assisted in casualty evacuation. Her actions saved 11 lives in a 72-hour period. Kellen finally stepped forward. He'd been silent through the entire controversy, knowing that Nora had her reasons for not defending herself. But now, with permission granted and witnesses safe, he could speak. "I remember the smell of iodine," he said, addressing the full chapel. "I remember the sound of blue thread being pulled through fabric. And I remember 4 words she said: hold breath, press bandage, wait for quiet." He reached into his dress uniform and pulled out a small piece of fabric, sand-colored gauze with blue thread, torn and stained with old blood. "I've carried this for 4 years. It's part of the bandage that saved my life." Nora looked down at the gauze in her own hands. The blue X pattern threading matched perfectly. 2 pieces of the same story, kept separate for 4 years, now reunited in front of everyone who had doubted. The confrontation with doubt was direct but respectful. The military blogger who had started the controversy stood up. "I based my report on incomplete records. I didn't know about the redactions." Kellen's response was measured. "You reached a conclusion without complete information, but it was Nora who provided the lesson that would stay with everyone. Nobody owes anyone their complete story when people still need protection," she said quietly. "Some silences save lives." The emotional transformation in the chapel was visible. The relative who had questioned her credentials approached with tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry. I should have trusted Kellen's judgment." Several reporters put away their cameras and microphones. One deleted a tweet he'd posted minutes earlier. The applause that followed wasn't loud or lengthy, just a single wave of clapping that acknowledged respect regained and truth revealed. 3 flashback images played on the screen, bringing everyone into that moment 4 years ago. Nora kneeling in dust and gunfire, hands pressing bandages, lips moving in silent counting as warm blood soaked through her gloves. Kellen barely conscious, hearing 4 words like a metronome pulling him back from the edge of darkness. Hold breath, press bandage, wait for quiet. Samir leading a group of children through a dark alley, carrying the hope that redacted reports would buy his family time to reach safety. The twist was complete. From suspected fraud to confirmed hero, from questioned motives to understood sacrifice, from wedding day controversy to public honor. But the most important recognition came from an unexpected source. A young paramedic in the congregation stood up. She was maybe 25, new to emergency medicine, still learning how to stay calm under pressure. "Ma'am," she said to Nora, "could you teach me how to count heartbeats when someone can't count their own?" Nora smiled for the first time that day. "Start with your own breathing. 4 counts in, hold for 4, 4 counts out. Then you can count for someone else." The lesson was simple, but everyone understood its deeper meaning. Some people count heartbeats for others when those hearts forget how to beat steadily. Some people choose silence to protect the vulnerable. Some people carry blood-stained bandages as reminders that saving lives sometimes means sacrificing recognition. As the chapel prepared for the actual wedding ceremony, the atmosphere had completely changed. Where there had been whispers of doubt, there was now respectful silence. Where there had been questions about authenticity, there was now understanding of sacrifice. Where there had been stolen valor accusations, there was now recognition of genuine heroism that had chosen anonymity over acclaim. Nora Hayes wasn't a fraud who had invented a story to marry a SEAL commander. She was a combat medic who had saved lives and then stayed silent for 4 years to keep saving them. The wedding could finally begin, but it would no longer be about 2 people getting married. It would be about a community learning the difference between glory that demands recognition and honor that works in silence. Major Deacon's final act was both simple and profound. He sent a military challenge coin to the chapel engraved with 2 words, "Silent Heartbeat." Kellen received it on Nora's behalf and placed it in her hands before the altar. But Kellen refused to let her bow or accept it in the traditional military manner. Instead, he saluted her as he would salute a fellow service member who had saved his life. The gesture was captured by every camera in the room, but more importantly, it was witnessed by everyone who had doubted her story. A small memorial plaque was mounted on the chapel wall near the altar. For the one who counted the silent heartbeats. Beneath it hung a replica of the sand-colored gauze with blue X pattern thread. Not as decoration, but as a reminder of the hands that had pressed life back into dying soldiers. The chaplain asked the congregation to observe 10 seconds of silence, to honor those who have counted heartbeats for others when their own hearts had forgotten the rhythm. The silence was complete. Even the children stopped fidgeting. In that moment, everyone understood what they were witnessing. Not just a wedding, but the recognition of sacrifice that had remained hidden to protect the innocent. The young paramedic who had asked for instruction approached during the brief reception. "The counting technique," she said quietly. "Could you show me how it works?" Nora demonstrated with gentle patience. 4 counts to breathe in, hold for 4, 4 counts to breathe out. Once your breathing is steady, you can help someone else find their rhythm. What if their heart is too damaged? Then you count for them until their heart remembers how to count for itself. The lesson rippled through the small crowd of medical professionals in attendance. Simple wisdom that would be carried into emergency rooms and ambulances across the city. As Nora prepared for the ceremony, her wedding veil had been altered with a thin blue thread sewn along the edge. Barely visible unless someone looked closely, but unmistakably the same thread that had marked her medical supplies years ago. The final moment before the ceremony began, Kellen took her hand. "The silent heartbeats of war end today," he said. "Now we count heartbeats together, in peace." Mrs. Chen, the elderly chapel caretaker who had preserved Nora's USB testimony, watched from the back row with tears in her eyes. She had seen many weddings, but few where the bride's heroism was questioned and then proven beyond doubt. Few where a community learn the difference between seeking